welcome back to this month's episode of Commerce of Care. This month we're featuring the Duke Business Behind Health founder, Gabby Perry, so this is long overdue. And Gabby is not your typical Duke student, so tell us why.
I think it's important to first understand a pretty important part of my upbringing. I'm the daughter of immigrants and also the eldest sister. I have a little brother that I adore.
I get older sister energy, for sure.
And I was raised with three pretty core values that show up in my life today. Work hard, be great, take school seriously, and lead by example. And so I think that has continued to impact a lot of the decisions that I make today and how I show up in this world. And in terms of my story of how I'm not the typical Duke student, that one is pretty fun. So I didn't want to go to college, which, Mom, I'm so sorry.
It's getting out.
She did not want to hear that. I wasn't, and obviously, first and foremost, Duke is an incredible school. It is a place that people dream of, and while I have always wanted to do something great in this world, I didn't dream of Duke. I didn't dream of any particular school. I sort of applied to Duke on a whim. My dean, who to this day I'm so grateful, there's so many people in your life that do small, instantaneous actions that can have compounding effects over time.
The butterfly effect.
Yeah, and just immediately change the trajectory of my life. I did not want to go to college. I applied to Duke on the whim. On the day the ED application was due is when I wrote my supplements. I submitted it and I got in. And it was really fun, but I didn't really think I grasped the impact of it because I wasn't attached to a college outcome. Though today I am very happy that I went to Duke. It's the impact of my education, but also most importantly the experiences and the opportunities it's granted me has been amazing.
Can you talk a bit, you've mentioned beforehand the transition from Jamaica to the US from public school to private school. How has kind of going into these different worlds been able to make you adapt and given you a different perspective?
Oh my God, it's been everything. And thank you for prompting that because it's sort of a superpower I didn't realize that I had until I got older and recognized that not everyone was comfortable navigating people that are different from them in every sense of the word. I grew up in New York City. Prior to that, I was in Jamaica for a few years because that's where my family's from. And going from a very community-centered place that's warm, tropical, really good food, to then the concrete jungle. And to be clear, I'm such a New Yorker through and through. I love it. But it's a big shift, and also like the economics of my family significantly changed as well when my mom came here on her own, and sort of our lifestyle and the way that I had to learn to adapt to new communities, new senses of safety, new financial constraints, and then also life is very different today. And sort of going from that environment, I mean, in public schools in New York are pretty segregated as well, unless you live, like, in most scenarios, a well-funded zip code area, which we did not at the time. You don't have access to great education. I mean, my STEM access, I'm not kidding, my science classes, all of elementary school or magic school bus episodes.
Oh, wow.
I did not learn a single thing. And I think about that pretty often, honestly. And it's then I went to my private school, Poly Prep Country Day School, where I had a blast. I loved my teachers. Again, they're still my mentors, some of them till this day. It's where I got to travel across the country through speech and debate. It's where I had state-of-the-art dance studios. Our coaches were former Olympians.
Wow.
And you get this concentrated time of care and attention because your teachers aren't bounded by the responsibilities of the classroom and trying to emotionally manage everything. And so it, number one, taught me what access to capital means. Especially in the United States. It also taught me the value of interconnectivity because while I was navigating a new environment with peers who had access to almost everything, I also was still in touch with my friends from public school and being able to navigate people who just grew up in completely different circumstances, but at the end they were still all people. We all go through this, we're all kids growing up. But I think that's something that I didn't realize would really help me as I got older, especially then coming to Duke, where it's a very diverse student body, but it's also pretty siloed in different ways. And so I've never been uncomfortable with the unknown. And I've also never been uncomfortable with people. There's a quote by James Baldwin that I adore. It's, "I am human, nothing human is alien to me." And it's something I've carried.
That's a really good one.
I love it. I mean, different age groups, different genders, different interests. I really do believe that you can connect with anyone. Doesn't mean everyone's for you. but it's a superpower, and I think had I not grown up the way that I did in the circumstances that I did, I don't think I would have been able to do that as comfortably as I am today.
Okay, so you're arriving at Duke. You weren't even sure before if you wanted to go to college. And you're like, okay, a typical major is clearly not for me.
Mm-hmm.
You are in program 2. So can you talk a bit about what designing your major was like, what drove you to want to do that, and the benefits with it?
Yeah, time is precious, and I never wanted to experience the feeling of sitting in a classroom that I did not want to be in. Knowing again the value of how important education is, working hard, leading by example. Yeah, if I was going to do college, I wanted to do it right. And by doing it right, meaning I wanted to be really enamored by the professors and the world that I was surrounded in. So quite frankly, when I heard of Program 2 and found out that it's a way I can select every single one of my classes, I was getting on board. I was like, some way I am going to figure out something interesting enough to me that I'll be able to study for the next 4 years, but also quite transparently put me in contact and in front of the professors that I want to build relationships with, put me in classes with peers that I am really intrigued by and curious about, and then also forced me to work on a problem that I find most interesting. I think the challenge, however, is that as you age, your interest can grow. And so I think being aware of sort of both the constraints and flexibility that Program 2 can offer you, because what you're passionate about freshman year may not be what you're passionate about senior year. And so instead, what I ended up on is I study how the financial markets, health policy, and real estate impact quality of life around the world. I'm really interested in people. On a selfish note, I'm interested in longevity. And health has always been something that I found particularly interesting growing up in Jamaica, which is a developing country, and then coming to the US and being shocked by the level of negative health outcomes despite being one of the richest countries in the world. And just not understanding why at a young age and being very curious about that. And healthcare is a massive industry, and there's a lot of different problems and potential solutions and lots of room for innovation. So I knew that I wouldn't be bored. My major was broad enough to, again, keep me active, but also meeting a bunch of different people. And I've always been fascinated in the health and wellness space in particular, and more so, I should say, personalized and preventative health, because health and wellness has become sort of a loaded term these days, where it's a lot of wish-washy content or wish-washy solutions. And I understood that when I want to go into this, anything that I do, I want to be science-backed, evidence-based.
Have the credentials. Back up what you're talking about.
And so I need to be in the same classes as my pre-med friends, my biomedical engineer friends, but also the flexibility to accomplish all of those things I listed prior. And Program 2 is this one-stop shop to do all of that.
Okay, one question about that before we dive in more into what you do in the healthcare realm. I'm curious, when you're going about selecting these classes, and just for advice of anyone who's watching, how to best make use of selecting your classes, what stands out to you the most? Is it the professors? Is it just the topic itself? What do you look for?
Well, first on an approval level, you have to make sure that your classes properly answer your research question and the question that you're exploring. And so it can't be randomly picking something and then finding a way to make it work. It has to work. So you're sort of still caught within these parameters. And so for me, when I'm looking through the financial markets angle, it's okay. So I'm looking in the financial markets department or economics or I&E or anything that has overlap with like economic incentives and development. Who are the best professors within that division? What are their background and their experiences? I personally love professors who've had real world experience because while I think, and we'll touch on this later in terms of like the strengths of the real world, internships, post-grad, it's so fun to sit in theory all day. I love philosophy, I love literature, I love reading, but I think it's different when it's like, okay, but tangibly when you get out there, what are the incentives? How do you actually make things happen? And so I really adore and connect with professors who can dream the impossible, because that's what I want to do. I want to accomplish every single one of my goals and make this world a better place, but what are the systems that are in place that I have to navigate in order to do that?
And to learn from professors who have already done that.
Exactly.
And then last question, major related with Program 2, you're bringing in so many interests. I think there's a line that I've heard and that you've heard a lot, which is the idea of, jack of all trades, master of none. How, when you're pulling these together, do you make sure you're not spreading yourself too thin?
No, and that is an excellent question, and it is a very true statement. I mean, when I look in hindsight at my Duke career, it's so funny to say that. That's like a common vernacular, Duke career. I have touched on almost every single industry. I mean, my first internship after freshman year, I was in the real estate space with a startup founder that I really adored, and I went to that startup simply because I wanted to have a relationship with the founder, and I ended up falling in love with real estate. My second internship was at JP Morgan in finance. Third summer was in fintech AI, and in between that, I co-founded 2 different organizations, one in the fashion space and the creative industries market, and now in the health and wellness market.
We'll talk about both of those, yes.
And I distinctly remember that transition point between finance and then that time I started health, the business behind health at Duke. I had a breakdown. I was like, oh my God, I'm so scatterbrained. So how I make decisions now is very different how I used to make them, and I don't regret it. I needed to do that to get here. But I was worried that I was a jack of all trades and a master of none, and it's something my mom says to me all the time. What I did not recognize, however, is number one, I accomplished my goal, which is when I went to college, I set out to make sure that I understood exactly the choices that I was making for post-grad and didn't live in a world of what-ifs. And I think that's very personal. Especially when speaking to entrepreneurs, different speakers, my mentors, and various alumni, I don't think there's one way to do life. Instead, what I do is I listen to the people whose positions I want to end up in. I do pattern recognition. What are the things that they consistently say across the board? And then, are these people living life in the way that I want to and have the same values that are aligned with me, and make my decisions from there? I think that, again, it's fun to sit in theory all day and make guesses, but you can't learn anything until you fail, and so fail fast and do it as responsibly as you can and calculated as you can. But yeah, I went through a breakdown, and I'm so clear at this point that it wasn't a master of all trades and a jack of all trades.
Master of none seeing it. No, yeah, she's making it better.
Because I quite frankly, I'm so able to see the through line in all the work that I do. Number one, I'm obsessed with building. I love a 0-to-1 phase, and that's the common denominator in every single one of the things I did. There wasn't a single internship that I didn't start an initiative, literally starting initiatives at my school. But also, again, going back to that original trait of being very flexible in different spaces, I love solving problems, which requires meeting people. And each time that I meet people, a new solution pops up. And luckily, because I'm a college student and not running like a real business, I have the flexibility to explore those different things in different mediums. And today, I'm able to see the through line as health and wellness, business being a vehicle to accomplish all of those things, and entrepreneurship to be a vehicle to have impact at scale. Businesses change the world every single day, regardless of whether or not you think it's positive or negative. They change the shape of the world, and they change regulation, they change people, and they change markets. And so how can I study how to be excellent at all of that? What does business development and growth look like? And then how do I build like a brand from the ground up, and being able to pivot? That's one thing I recognize, my ability to pivot.
What are your biggest skills?
One of my biggest skills, I'm very comfortable in uncertainty as well. Very comfortable. It doesn't worry me. I say constantly, like in these organizations that I lead, when issues come up, I say, there's a solution to every problem, we just haven't found it yet. And I'm able to do that because I know what it looks like to be like, okay, try a new thing. However, I'm at a point though where through exploring my different interests, I know what lights me up, and it's certainly health. I mean, we'll touch on this a bit. I model outside of school, and it's more so for like offering a platform to work with brands that I'm really interested in the health space. Build a platform, especially we all know the value of social media and digital nowadays, and it's also a way for me to still fuel that creative outlet on the side. I digress. I can speak forever.
Okay, so we've hinted at the 2 clubs that you're responsible for. Can you tell me a bit about the first one, DBRS?
Yeah, so DBRS, which is the Duke Business of Retail Society, when I was a part of it, was known as the Duke Business of Fashion Summit. And this was my first ever student organization, and it also started on a whim, similar to my Duke decision. So yeah, this was originally the picture of my co-founder, Sophia Yossinger, and she met me at the Creator Lab, which is a student organization that a dear friend of mine, Lily Annenberg, founded. And it was sort of a meet and greet event. We went around the room, we said our introductions, and Sophia comes up to me and she says, I have this club, I want to do this thing, I was told to come to you. And we had coffee, and I distinctly remember her asking me, what does fashion mean to me? And ironically enough, because of the modeling that I do outside of school, she assumed, and she distinctly told me this, that I would say cute clothes, fun times, fun shoots, and I go, impact. And I say that I think that the clothes that you wear every single day represent how you want to show up in this world and the character that you want to play, and it could give you confidence or take away confidence. I think about access to being able to wear whatever you want in your closet, or passing a store and be like, oh, I wish I could get that. It also means sustainability. How do we build a healthier world? Because
the environmental impact,
exactly. And so fashion to me just oriented in all these different spaces, and I shared that my one requirement for being involved with this initiative was that it had to have meaning to me that was personal, because that's when I do my best work. And that was my one constraint, and she said done. And I introduced her to my friend Nina, who they now lead DBBH today, and they're doing such an amazing job. It shifted completely into something different, and that's when we started DBFS, and it was an amazing ride, and it taught me so much.
Yeah, what were the trials and errors? I mean, this is your first big club off the rails. How are your lessons? How are your, roadblocks, everything that you ran into?
There were so many lessons, and I'm so incredibly grateful that I had DBFS before I had DBBH. Number one big thing that I should have done, so note the story that I told you, I asked Sophia no follow-up questions. I was like, I love building things. I immediately saw this as an opportunity, especially with my interest in entrepreneurship, to build something from the ground up. I also was curious about fashion as a business at the time, working on the more creative side. And I was like, this is my opportunity to sort of like explore that segue, but your co-founders matter.
So you just jumped right in. You didn't take any temperature checks?
No temperature checks. And I don't regret that, because again, I wouldn't be here today without it, but I would never do that again. Never. I would need to know that my co-founders and I were very aligned on our values, our skills complementary. Do we have the same vision? But it was such a good ride. I mean, there were so many things that went wrong. For one, we weren't approved as a student club, and we went ahead and did it anyways. We got rejected. Duke did not see the value in it at the time, and at the time I was the Chief Operations, Financial, and Impact Officer. And obviously, as the Chief Financial Officer,
how did you fundraise?
We're screwed, because Duke usually needs to give us money. Oh, how did I fundraise? So we were transparent. We're really struggling with money, and we started to GoFundMe. And so I fundraised a total of $14,000.
So how did you get that crowd? How did you convince people to pay?
For one, skill to develop for everyone is the ability to storytell, and it was very clear that we could not just sell this as a student organization that needed money at Duke. We were change makers, building a creative space and access to Duke students who can never have these opportunities without us here. And really appealing to the parents who had kids that had this creative side to themselves but didn't have the resource and access to at this university, which is so ironic because Duke is one of the most resource-oriented places in the world. And we were arguing that you need to show up for every single type of student, and that all we needed to do to get there was a little bit of funding and cash, which parents are in plethora of here. And we really had the really major help of our sort of like club advisor, she's on the board now for DBRS, and mentor Remy Brooke, who helped us out a lot. And simply by sending it out to, and so for context, she's the creative director, CEO, she's done so many different hats with her brand, Remy Brooke. And she sent it in a group chat with her friends. I mean, that raised half of the money alone. And so I also think a massive lesson there, especially being the daughter of immigrants, not really understanding how certain things play in the back end. DBFS taught me everything about network and what does it mean to be connected with the right people.
How much people matter.
How much people matter. Who they know matters. It's how we were able to find these speakers we recruited. I originally mentioned that we need to, and I did this again with DBBH, that we need to pressure test. Are we solving a real pain point for students? And so we put up flyers for this fake organization that didn't exist. And within the first day, we got 60 signups. And how we recruited our team quite transparently, and this is the credit to my co-founder who's from LA, and this is much more typical in LA. Networking, being very upfront about it. Who knew who? Oh my God, I can't say.
Who knew who, yeah.
Who knew who?
Tongue twister.
And that's how we started our team, and it was a team of 24 people with different divisions, and we were just a bunch of kids with a dream. And I learned so much. I mean, there's so much that went wrong. And when I first met Ella, which we'll touch on in a second, I shared with her everything that I did wrong. In DBFS, for her to understand that what were the mistakes I made so that she could not make them too. Also, like, how could we make sure that we didn't repeat these mistakes, but also being transparent about like why failure is important, why we need to create a culture where we demand excellence but simultaneously encourage people to try things, because that's how we figure out what works and what doesn't. And yeah, I mean, it could go on, but in the end, I'm very grateful, and it taught me a lot. And what's really cool is being a part of something that lasts beyond you.
The fact that it was just an idea in your head and now it's out there living. Yeah.
And a mentor of mine shared with me, this is something I've had to learn, being focused on impact over ego. Because when I had made the decision to ultimately pivot, when I recognized ultimately fashion was not for me on the business side, that I just had other interests that like were much more exciting to me, that not letting the sunk cost fallacy get in the way. Because I was like, I put so much time and
to just leave it, in
this to leave. But ultimately, my work there was done, and I had nothing left to give. Mm-hmm. And there was someone at this point who could do the job better than I could. Mm-hmm. And I was ready to transition, and so I did.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one quick question so you're starting this club, you're starting with someone, you haven't really talked much about your values and like, the temp checks of starting a club. What was it like having, navigating the experience of both a friend and like a co-leader or like, employee versus in a college setting? It's not someone getting paid.
No, 100%. I mean, she's on the team. She knows what it's like to work with. I think it's difficult, and that's why it's perfect. And that's why I really do encourage people to be, if you have a great idea, I do say don't start a club for the sake of starting a club. Make sure that it's a real pain point, because otherwise it's just, there's clubs that already exist that could give you that built-in infrastructure for you to already have processes, and then you could innovate within that with money and not having to fundraise all over again. But yeah, it's difficult because you're not getting paid to do any of the work that you do. And we simultaneously encourage every single member to not only, we literally say this, we don't want good, we want people to be amazed by the standards that we're willing to go to. We want to create a culture of excellence, and we do. But how do we create an incentive for you to do that? Because you're working for free. You're going to see me in class tomorrow. And we also, at the end of the day, we're all just a bunch of college students. And I'm not more qualified than you are to necessarily do something. So it's about creating a culture of trust. And so I think something that's key for me, especially in interviews, is identifying what is the reason that people are joining this organization. Very key. And making sure that the reason that they joined is something that they're still fulfilling along the way. And so making sure that the time that they're putting in is what they're getting out. And that's also why for Business Behind Out that we're very intentional about creating different tiers of involvement. And so we have the slogan, find your place in DBBH, and you can join us anywhere. If you want to simply just be a member on the newsletter, get access to the great opportunities that we do, come to conference once a year, you don't need to do anything besides be on the newsletter, because Duke students are busy. As much as I'm sitting here and saying all the things that I do, my peers are also doing amazing, incredible things. And so understanding that everyone has different interests, and there's different clubs I want to think, oh, this is so cool, but I only have the capacity to attend a few events a year. Then layer above that, we have different interactive programs. So we have an incubator program where students solve real-world health problems with real companies, with real mentors. And that is about like a commitment about 4 to 6 hours a week. And it's like everything we do, very intentionally cross-disciplinary, collaborative. And that is, you get to do that for a semester, and then you could dip your toes in, get your resume experience, and dip out. But you'll also have access to an extra tier of more private engagement opportunities with us. And then above that, we have our directors, who I would say, depending on your role, it can be up to 6 hours. We try not to do that. We also try to keep it to 4 to 6 hours, but it's also dependent. Some roles are cyclical. I would say like your time commitment can look different from the commitment of the corporate directors.
No, definitely.
We're like organizing different events a week. Or even our impact directors who are helping to coordinate the relationships with these companies and making sure that these projects are getting done and labs are getting approved and different patents are working out. And then you have your VPs, who I would say it can get a little up there. And we're very clear on that. We're clear about our expectations of the roles to ensure that people know what they're signing up for and they're willing to commit to it. And then the presidency, there isn't a day that I don't work on DBBH, but I also think that's the bias of being founders. Ella and I recognize
it's your baby.
It's your baby, and so no one's going to care as much as we do, and that's also something we had to recognize too. Being realistic about that, we were like, why does no one want to work on this as hard as we do? And it's because it's not their baby, and so how do we create this? But I will say that our team puts in work, and there's days where we have our exec meetings and we walk out and Ella and I just say, we did good, we did really good. And
that's a great feeling to have to walk away knowing what you helped create and all the people coming into it.
But just I would say being kind, being transparent, making sure that our team members are getting what they want out of the experience is key. And just, knowing how to navigate different dynamics. I make it very clear, like, we're cat, friend, cat. Like, I think she's super awesome. You know what I mean? And, like, we talk
at you.
and, like, so it's super fun when it's, like, okay, we could talk about unserious stuff, but then also, like, you have to deal with me when I'm being, like, strict.
There's a strict Gabrielle.
And so I think it's just, but it's also, I will say something, especially as someone that cares about people, it's also growing to be comfortable and not being liked. There's times I was speaking out where I wish that some members that I'm like, oh, I wish they knew how, like, fun I was, or they knew a different side of me. But if I want to do this for real in the real world, I've got to be, my job is not to make employees. I mean, my job is to make a place that employees look forward to going to every day, but I can't please everyone, and I can't make decisions based on what's going to be happiest for everyone in the room. I need to make decisions based on what's happiest for the business, like this student club.
So can you talk a little bit about DBBH's vision as a whole, and also just your vision into healthcare? What really makes you passionate about the impact you want to make? And, you're coming at it from a perspective that's very different from most people. It's not medicine, it's not healthcare consulting. It's like a very different realm of the finances and real estate. I feel like a lot of people are listening, they're like, real estate with healthcare, what are you talking about? So tell me a bit about that.
No, yeah, totally natural. So just like you mentioned, my comfortability, my clarity in the execution of the vision that I had for Business Behind Health at Duke was a direct result of my clarity in what I study. I study systems and how they reinforce each other. Something that I mentioned prior to this podcast when I was speaking privately is that health outcomes start way before you step foot in a hospital room. It starts in the country that you were born, the norms of the place that you're born into, the access to resources, how close you are to a hospital. What neighborhood did you grow up in? What school did you go to? Did you have a health and wellness class? Did you have a sex ed class? Are you in an area where you have access to a Planned Parenthood? Are you underinsured? You can still have healthcare insurance, but if your parents have to pay a high copay, they're less incentivized to take you to your regular checkups. Are you in a situation where your family is aware of the impacts that certain foods can have on you? Are you in a neighborhood?
What are you eating every day?
What are you eating? Are you aware of the impact of exercise, especially for women? I know in particular, we're now aware of, like, the importance of strength training, but there was also a time in culture where the idea was you don't want to train for muscles because you don't want to look bulky. And are you, like, conscientious of that? The list just really goes on. And then when it comes to the real estate angle, I mean, real estate is literally everything that I just said. Geography, schools, money coming into your neighborhood, groceries, access to hospitals. All of that is decisions that developers make.
Where you live.
Yeah, every single day. And so for me, real estate is a physical manifestation of that love for 0 to 1, literally seeing things be in your head and then executed in real life. But also, too, it's literally a physical manifestation of all those systems that I just described, and even more tangibly, the quality of the air that you breathe, the quality of the building that you live in. And I referenced one example of when I was at my first internship, and what was really cool about it is that it specialized in affordable housing, but also, so it made it profitable, which was really fascinating without removing the people in the neighborhood. It's a really cool company, Essence Development, you should look it up. Led by an incredible team, the founder just is such a major reason why I chose to work there. And it was the first time that, especially in New York City, I walked through project housing, which is Section 8 housing, which is incredibly stigmatized in different parts of the U.S., but especially in New York. Growing up in, like, the culture, it's like you don't want to walk through the projects, and it's really distasteful and dehumanizing. But quite frankly, I was one of those people that fell victim to it. I'm a girl. I'm very, like, hypersensitive to, like, walking in foreign areas, and it was the most transformative, one of many transformative things in my life. I was in and out of those areas every single day. I got to build real relationships with the people, with all of the residents, and then ended up in different apartments and ended up in a situation where I saw asbestos on the walls, and I had to control myself because there was a baby right in contact
breathing that air.
Yeah. And that most tangibly in time. That's literally that's impact on breathing, asthma, what conditions are they sensitive to, what is the quality of air that they're breathing in again, and then coupled with also what are all those other factors that I listed, which are compounded by economic resources. And so the whole just became very clear to me, the gap became very clear to me, and wellness real estate is a term that's much more common today, but still new, and it's something that's really, really exciting to me. So that's sort of the lens. But I didn't say how the vision of DBBH came to be.
Oh yeah, well I mean that was beautiful right there. I feel like I've never heard someone talk so in depth about wellness real estate. Now my interest is piqued on it.
And then I ended up, speed forward to that summer between starting DBFS, walking away, and then I was in Duke and Silicon Valley and then worked at JP Morgan shortly after. And that is where I met my co-founder, Ella, a biomedical engineer student who is just as eager and passionate about the same things that I am in this world. But we were so enamored by how we approached thinking differently, right? The education that Trinity cultivates is so different, which is, I love how engineers think. I love how comfortable they are.
Problem solving.
And that's the thing I love about I&E, about being able to cultivate a small facet of that alongside my own humanities education, which still though is very important, because Ella admits there are things that I'm able to solve that she can never look at in the same way, and vice versa. We also learn from one another. So again, going back to
complement each other,
complementary. But also being values oriented, understanding what we each offer, how far we're willing to go, and also respect. I spent a lot of time. Ella and I were the girls that always were the last in the room. Not girls, people. We were the last in the room. We networked with every single alumni. We were always the people raising our hand. I mean, people were getting sick of us. It was like, Ella has a question, Gabby has a question, Ella has a question, Gabby has a question. And so I really respected her as a peer, but then also could spend time with her. I mean, we go to yoga classes and try new restaurants, and we were going to be spending a lot of time.
You did a lot of temp checks with
that. And so that was really, really important. And so I came to her and I pitched, again, my contacts with DBFS, everything that I did wrong, everything that went well. And I was very clear, like I said, on how I see healthcare being very siloed at Duke, which she was a manifestation of. We would have never met had it not been for this program. Often pre-med, biomedical engineer, or maybe health policy. And the world exists so much in between. And I learned that especially in my classes, introducing new terms to my peers. We're like, I've never heard of that. I'm like, oh my God, this is what it is. And I wanted to create an environment for collaboration, to really work with the people that I would be navigating relationships with down the line in the future, and just experimenting and building a really cool thing. And we did really solve a niche though, because the truth of the matter is so many of these kids go into health for altruistic reasons and they want to help people, but you can't help in a system that you don't know the rules that you're playing with. And something that alumni consistently pointed to us is that they wish they knew how interconnected health was, especially in the US, regardless, or even if you're not in a health directive industry, like the systems that I mentioned earlier, every decision has ramifications. And so the more that people are educated about that, the more conscientious that they can be, but also the more conscious that the people are in the systems making those decisions, the more prepared they are to really attack the game. And we wanted to create that, and fast forward to Business Behind Health at Duke to what it is today.
So you're illuminating so much more than just the stepping foot into the hospital. There's so much more that goes into it. So I'm curious, when it comes to having this club, like this is your baby, and you're like a senior, how has it changed throughout the years? And as you're looking forward, how are you prepping it to succeed on its own, I guess?
I feel really good about what I'm leaving behind. I was very intentional entering my senior year about setting DBBH up to exist beyond me. And I spent time speaking to student affairs officers and department heads about what do they see as the biggest pros and cons about club turnovers. What are the issues with longevity? I'd love to come back in 10 years and still see this exist. And I took their feedback and I became very intentional about mentorship and transparency, and most importantly, cultivating teams that felt comfortable to make their own decisions. And as they made their own decisions, I could watch people trial, error, give feedback, give them insight, and create a team that I could quite literally visibly see operating without me. And so seeing that gives a lot of comfort. We've set it up in such a way that we already know what the team looks like next year. We've been very intentional on shadowing, which is very helpful, which is a lot of clubs do that here, which is definitely very, very helpful. And I feel no qualms about what's coming next. And we also, we were able to keep a very high retraction rate with our founding members. So all of our founding members are still on the team, and I was very intentional about them being juniors. I wanted them to be a year beneath me. I'll be the first graduate of Business Behind Health at Duke. No, Nishan, who joined this year.
Yeah.
Nishan will be 2. And Kat. No, Kat's a junior. So we'll have 2 alumni. And yeah, I feel really good because I could see it in front of me and I trust the team. And you guys are all so incredible and driven and passionate. And I think what makes DBBH really unique, which we always say to each other, is we actually like seeing each other. And that's a culture that we're very intentional about. And it's never like we're scared to see each other in the hallways or we think, oh my God, we have work to do. What is the thing that I'm missing? It's let's like sit down and have lunch and we can worry about that later.
Okay, so you've obviously made it very clear, you're very accomplished, you're taking on so many things. What is the reality of that? Because I think it's so easy to, scroll on someone's LinkedIn and be like, wow, they have it all together. There's so much they're doing. But in terms of actually pushing yourself to do all these things, what are the trade-offs, if there are any? What does it look like in real time affecting a college experience?
That's very true. Ironically enough, I gave a TED Talk to the freshman and sophomore class 2 days ago.
So very fresh in your mind. That's
very
good.
fresh in my mind. And the concept was about failure. And the premise of my speech was about the fact that environments like Duke that are pressure-oriented, but often just in life, it's quick that we can make judgments about people, especially in the age of the internet where you only see people's highlight reels, especially the professional highlight reel, LinkedIn, and you don't see the decisions that they had to make along the way to get to where they are today. Every time that I built something meaningful here, or in life, something else slipped. So transparently, while I built DBFS, and I'm someone that I'm so lucky to have such incredible friends, none of my friends saw me. I never saw my friends. The only people I saw were my team and my roommate. And I certainly, again, don't look back on that time. And I'm someone that I don't believe in living with regrets. I think you learn and make it right. And so I definitely am very intentional about prioritizing the eulogy virtues and scheduling that in, while I also, I'm not play this game, I'm a workaholic. And keeping that in mind, I have to create systems for that. But yeah, so that was like one thing. And then on the other flip side, when I started DBBH, my grades slipped. And I then, from learning from that, I then created systems to make sure that didn't happen again. But it's very easy to make picture judgments about people and not recognize that said picture is incomplete. And I would say for a lot of my friends especially my friends working on startups who have cash flow running businesses, it's the same exact thing. You have to make trade-offs, and I think it's important in order to make those trade-offs, you have to be really clear on what's important to you. Because otherwise, you're making decisions that are not worthwhile your time. But what matters is you find it important. But simultaneously, like I said, while keeping in mind that passion is important, what's the payoff? And is it the best interest for you in mind? And so I think that's also why having a board of mentors and advisors who brainstorm with you, I'm able to feel very comfortable in my decisions. My dean backing me as well certainly helps.
Okay, that's really good to know. So as you've kind of gone through and decided what's worth it for you, what's not, obviously, again, touching back on the fact that you're so busy, how do you decide to delegate your time and how have you gotten better with that over time?
Yeah, so how have I decided to delegate my time? Well, I think we can start tangibly, right? If you're listening, oh, we have a lot going on, how do I do it? Calendar your life. And that sounds really basic, but every single thing is in my calendar, including the things that I need to perform at my best, especially because the majority of my days are in different meetings for different reasons, which I also work outside of school. And so the great thing about being this, you want to do great work, but you also want to be a great partner, which means you need to be in a good mood and be a good person. And so I have certain things that keep me well.
Like non-negotiables?
Non-negotiables, exactly. Non-negotiables are sleep, good food, yoga, and meditation every single day. And I love a good lipstick to really top it all off. And so those are quite literally borders in my calendar, because if I don't prioritize them, they won't happen. But again, speaking in a position of being a student, obviously as a founder, you don't sleep sometimes, you don't eat. I completely get it, but while I do have the ability to recognize that that's accessible to me, and that's not to say that there aren't late nights sometimes, but for the most part, I have my longevity practices put into place. Time with friends is always scheduled and planned, less of on-a-whim things for me because my calendar gets full fairly quickly. But most importantly, going back to what I originally said, my time management is what is worth it to me, what's important to me. And also admitting that there's seasons. We're getting really close to conference. A lot of my schedule is DBBH oriented right now, simultaneously while being in my senior spring. And so while over break, with my friends, I sat down and we set out what are the things that we really want to make happen, what are the things that are important, and again, having great people around you, how can we support you during that time to make sure that you're doing this work, which I love. Again, I wouldn't want it to be any other way, but we can still make memories. So they're going to come to the conference and help set up and be part of the team for a little bit. But yeah, making sure that how you're spending your time is worthwhile to you, and then this new angle that I'm experimenting with. Again, there's no one way to live life. That I'm making sure that what I'm spending my time on is not only important to me, but worthwhile for Gabby today and Gabby tomorrow, and evaluating that. And so right now we're shifting this new era of DBBH where we're building that credibility and really trying to get our name out there.
And so going into the idea of like what you spend your time doing and like, you know, some type of branding, you spend some time modeling, and you've talked a little bit about beauty as health, and so I'm kind of curious, how do you see the two intersecting, especially the future as like how you would want it?
Yeah, I think beauty occupies this vertical of women's health, and I think that's why it's not readily seen as healthcare already, because of the fact that it primarily is women's oriented. I mean, our skin is the largest organ on our body, and we understand the impact of chemicals when it comes to sunscreens. We understand what's harmful with toxins, and yet we don't take a second to sit back and even evaluate, is the makeup on my face right now doing well for me? How is this impacting my inflammatory system, my gut health, everything? And we understand that when we like think about the food that we ingest, but quite literally the things that we put on our body. And so beauty in that lens for me is particularly important. And so part of the reason that I model not less of part of the reason that I model. One of the great things that model gives me access to is these brands, and using them as platforms to really meet these industries that are making changes that I want to see in the world. And the cool thing is, especially coming in with my interest, I'm able to really be a partner in the room. And the goal with that is to build long-term relationships. And the second avenue of beauty as a form of healthcare, it's also psychological. I mean, everyone knows the pressure that society places on women to present a certain way, especially at such a young age. And beauty, to me, on a more day-to-day basis, I like to think that it's a choice of the person that you choose to become. For me, the woman that I want to become, how do I embody myself in this world? And so with that is ensuring that proper messaging is out there. We're seeing this really cool shift in beauty right now, where it's less about fix this and embrace the beauty that you already have.
More enhance.
Exactly, yes. Enhance. And so, yeah, I think it's two-centered. I think it impacts a lot of women. I think we're going to see a lot more studies on the impacts of cosmetics and skincare on our bodies. The skin, it's not as regulated as other markets, which is crazy. And I think in due time we'll see that change happening, and I'm very excited to see that as well and be involved in that. And then two, understanding like the psychological, emotional, and mental impacts in particular. I mean, at the end of the day, it's less about feeling beautiful and more about feeling worthy. And I think how worthy you feel about the life that you deserve to have and the life that you deserve to go after has huge compounding effects and ramifications. And that's what I really try to encourage as many members of DBBH with students to do, is you are worthy of your wildest dreams, and you should go after it.
Yeah, step into your life with confidence.
Exactly.
Okay, so obviously in the beauty field, you know, we think about beauty products and we think about personal branding and how it draws people in. But how do you think that can be applied to the healthcare sphere, and how does it help DBBH in specific?
I mean, in DBBH, it's everything. The students who are already locked in on healthcare and the health ecosystem don't really need incentives to join the club. We have clear value, we have clear solutions, and they get a direct benefit out of it. And they don't really care about the stories that we tell online or how our Instagram looks or our TikToks.
They're already there.
They're already there.
Yeah.
But for the students who are health curious, who have no idea what direction they want to go, I think the way that we draw them in is by making it look like this is the place to be and making healthcare cool. And Elle and I walked in with a very clear understanding that we wanted to make healthcare sexy. We think it's really cool that a byproduct of your job is saving lives and saving real people. And there's an awesome way to brand that, but it's also genuinely the spot to be. On a personal level, I would say that personal branding is everything, especially as someone that is a multi-hyphenate in my interests. I'm ironically working on a website right now for my INE capstone portfolio requirement, which I can't say enough about INE. It changed my life. I don't know if I said that already, but genuinely that and the MS certificate, but I think the INE staff in particular are just exceptional people and really cultivate student interest, encourage them to pursue things. but being able to distill what you do, who you are, why you've made the choices that you've done, and why that makes you a candidate that's great for today, a business that you're selling, buying people into your mission, building community, personal branding, and storytelling is everything. And also recognizing that tailoring to audience is key without being dishonest or distrustful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think when you think about who you're advertising, trying to get from a business perspective, you have some people who already love, you have some people who are never going to join anyway. So like really focusing in on that bell curve and what will make them stray your way.
And even just in terms of healthcare and hospital rooms, right? Like there's a difference between a space that feels inviting. How do you create a room that feels human versus I feel very
cold and sterile
and cold and fearful, especially when you take into cultural dynamics. Someone who's already hesitant to enter a hospital room. What does that mean then to like creating an environment of safety and vulnerability? And even I think artificial intelligence is navigating this right now, right? How do you make a chatbot feel interpersonal? How do you make the leaders of artificial companies look human? And so right now they're navigating like communication managers and new positions are opening up. And I think we're seeing storytelling and being in touch with your humanity. And again, like I said earlier today, being able to connect with other people and really dig into your interpersonal relationships is everything.
That's a really good piece of advice. And I guess one last chance to add on to that advice, what's one big takeaway through your years at Duke and as you're about to graduate that you want to leave people with?
I think this is top of mind because of the Fail at Duke TED Talk series that I participated in the other day. I think it's important to remember that failure is two things. It's, number one, a prerequisite for success. I took this wonderful class, again, a product of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship department here with a Seema Sistani, who I cannot say enough is such a powerhouse. And she brought in Jennifer Fisher, who's another badass powerhouse woman. And she was very candid and open about the failures and mistakes that she made and being clear. And even another entrepreneur that I really respect through like the screen, Emma Grede. Failure, you can't get anywhere without learning, right? If you're not learning, you're not growing. And so don't be too hard on yourself when things go wrong. In fact, that means you're doing something right. The real question is, are you learning from those failures? Are you reflecting? Are you making sure that they don't happen again? And if you're always playing it safe, it means you're not taking enough risk. You're not pushing yourself far enough. But also, too, when that failure comes, because being real, if this feeling sucks when things don't work out, that grade, whether it's transitioning a big thing in college, especially talking to these freshmen with social dynamics, it's so normal to change your friends. Nothing's wrong with you. You're not behind. Everyone else doesn't have it figured out. It requires courage, and that transition period is the hard part.
The in-between is the hardest part.
It's the hardest part.
But you'll get to the other end.
You'll get to the other end, but it's that in-between really hurts. And so to remember in those moments is that failure is not a verdict, and it's not terminal. It is never the end. And the key is remembering that you're in this transition point and being conscious of that. This isn't the end, it's a transition. And you'll get to the other side eventually. And in that same vein, in that same class, there's this quote that Gwyneth Paltrow was a guest speaker. And something she said to me that ironically, out of all the amazing things that we learned that semester, this one really resonates, and pardon my French. She says, it was a quote that her dad told her, and she said, "No one gets out of this life without getting the shit pounded out of them." No one. And as someone that is performance-oriented, it eased this idea that I could prevent failure from happening. And I will be honest, I did internalize failure in the past, and I think it's hard not to when you try to do your best in everything that you can, but it's going to come around, and it's inevitable. And all you can do is dust yourself off. And the only way to really fail is to stop going forward. And so just be resilient, give yourself grace, try again. You will make it, you will be okay. And I don't know, I just meet new people, take risks, have audacity, be courageous, and most importantly, be yourself. Don't pretend to be someone you're not, because the right people and the right opportunities won't find you.
It's better to fail as someone else. I mean, as yourself than as someone else.
Exactly, because then you never got to really see what would have happened if you were really you. Enjoy college. I mean, the 4 years, it really flies by. And I hate to sound super preachy because, again, I think it's just things that I feel confident about now because I'm a senior, and so you've done enough trial and errors. But going back to, no one has the answers more than you do. and really cement in that. Everything that you need is already inside of you. I think it's a journey of uncovering those things. And I think life experience teaches you that. But I'm about to start a new journey. And while I may be like an expert in student clubs, I don't know about the real world. And I look forward to it, and I look forward to what's to come. But good luck, enjoy it, and just be yourself and try again.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. I hope you guys are leaving this as inspired as I am. And tune in for next month's episode.
Bye. Aww.